Everyone. I hope everyone's having a great morning. Welcome, Ambassador Kraft.
Thank
May
you.
I call you Kelly?
Absolutely.
We're on a first name basis on
Absolutely.
this stage. So you've been pretty low profile. You haven't done hardly anything, if anything, in the way of interviews. So people don't know you all that well. So let's talk a little bit about you, growing up in Kentucky, riding horses, and how important they were to your development of leadership as a woman.
I grew up on a farm, a working farm. My father was a veterinarian. We always thought that cats had one eye and dogs had three legs. And my first bicycle was a pony. And I think I learned at an early age, actually about the age of three or four, everybody received a pony when they turned 3, that you're going to take care of this rather large animal. So then I developed, I grew into a small pony, and then a pony, and then a horse, a 17.5-hand horse in middle school.
And how many feet is that, to give people an idea? That's
Goodness.
like big.
7, maybe 6 feet.
Yeah.
7 feet. And so I learned that you have to be in control, because the horse knows whether or not you have fear or you are firmly in control. And we would, fall off frequently, and my father would say, you're going to get right back up there, because you're not going to make the same mistake, but you're going to learn from that original mistake. And horses are great for girls, because you have to think about something other than yourself. Yeah. You've got to work, you've got to feed the horse, you've got to groom the horse, and it really gives you that feeling of, I can do this.
And control the horse.
Yeah.
You've got to control
Absolutely.
this large animal. So speaking of leadership, you're new to federal service,
Right.
just a year. You were thrown right into the mess of, or shall we say, heat of NAFTA. But people don't really know it. You were actually in the room with all the principals during that whole period. And now you and your colleague, or your peer, Ambassador David McNaughton, you are actually going to be doing a kind of a listening tour to investors who might have concerns about it. Tell us about that.
So we're going to start our tour in December, and it is going to be a listening tour. It's the Mac and Craft Chats, what we came to call it, because I think people, the relationship is strained, as we talked backstage. It is, to be quite honest.
The relationship between the two countries is strained.
Absolutely. And so for the two of us to be seen together also gives an image that, yes, it is strained, but there are so many important aspects of this relationship other than just USMCA that we're going to focus on. And we're going to listen to the concerns. And really, what's important is allowing the medium and small-sized businesses to know that we're all about cross-border trade, and that David, Ambassador McNaughton, and myself we are available. And if people have questions, if we don't know the answer, we will certainly go to our administration and come back with a response.
And you've talked about how the trade deal actually is going to help Kentucky, Appalachia, as well as some other sectors. Talk about your favorite parts of USMCA. How are you going to say USMCA? Are you going to do
USMCA.
New NAFTA, or are you going to do USMCA?
It's like the YMCA. I've got to get all the. Now, the surprise to me was the culture file, and being in Montreal really highlights the reason that the Prime Minister was non-negotiable on your culture file. And I really didn't understand that until I came to Montreal and then go back home to Appalachia. And the importance of preserving the culture in Kentucky, whether it be bluegrass music, they have a long history of storytelling in Eastern Kentucky, and also just the dialect. It's really given me, it's energized me to take that back home and to focus on our culture. So thank you, Montreal, because I would have not otherwise.
Yeah. Great. And so that was a big surprise for you about Canada coming here, understanding the culture. And you also talked about, when we were back there, technology jobs coming to Appalachia as a result.
Correct. In Appalachia, when you drive through, the scenery hasn't changed. They all look like coal mining towns, but without the coal mining jobs. So what we have done is we've developed clusters with technology, especially coding, that provides classes for coal miners and then puts them to work within about a 6-week period. So I think that's really important. And then you attract other businesses, because these families do not want to leave the home that they've always known. And that's what's important, is keeping them there, providing human dignity, which then promotes families. And it also promotes them to strive for something better. And I think that's been another bonus from NAFTA.
So in your role of ambassador, it's fascinating to me. You're an ambassador, but you're working for a president who is known for, so you're a chief diplomat, and you're working for a president who's known for being not diplomatic. How did that work for you during the trade negotiations?
Well, let me just tell you something you probably don't know about him. So during our negotiations, when we would take breaks, we frequently, Ambassador McNaughton and myself and Jerry Kirshner would head over to the Oval Office and give the president an update. He was fiercely loyal to the workers. And every time I left the Oval Office, he would say, Kelly, and I would turn around, don't forget the farmers. Yes, sir. No, don't forget the farmers. Don't forget the workers. He cares about the workers in the United States and North America, because obviously USMCA is not about a win-win-win. It's about winning for North America. And at the end of the day, that's what we all came to the table for.
And in this, but it was obviously a difficult period and led to strained relations, as you admit. But you made a nice friendship with Chrystia Freeland. Tell us about that.
I did. You know, Christy and I have this thing when she calls me and says ambassador, and I say minister. And then later on in the evening, she'll call and say, hey, Kelly, and I'll say, hey, Chrystia. So it's a wonderful balance. One story about the two of us is we were about 2 weeks before September 30th, we were all at the Intercontinental Hotel. I was not aware that the Canadian team was there. And we had a fire alarm. It was 2 in the morning, and we had all just gotten back to the hotel at about midnight, or I had returned. So here we all are, getting on the stairs, coming down, and I see the whole Canadian team, and then I'm just standing there by myself, and we're all like in our robes, you know. So we're like, well, we could just continue NAFTA right here and now. So then, you know, they tell us it's safe, and we opened up the elevators, and I'm going up to the 12th floor. I get off the elevator. She's taking the stairs, I just want you to know. And she's up there. And
of course she is.
Yeah. So by this time
and she probably had her tennis shoes with her.
So by this time, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and we're just having a chat. She goes, look, if you're locked out of your room, we'll just have a slumber party, and we can just figure this NAFTA thing out. So, yeah. So I grew to really respect her. She is a fierce negotiator, and I think that's something that really surprised both countries, is how fierce we were, because we had a lot at stake. And I mean, I think that's the important part to know, that the tone, the debate, the fierceness, we had to put emotions aside and just focus that this was not a competition, this was a negotiation, and at the end of the day, that's why we have USMCA.
Were there times when emotion felt like it was getting in the way?
I think there were many times, but the nice part about when you become emotional is when everybody gets up and leaves the table. So if you didn't have the foundation, you wouldn't be coming back to the table. So
right.
That's what's so important about
the foundation. It's like a timeout for grown-ups?
Yep, we had timeouts. Okay. We all had timeouts, absolutely. And you know, the real workers were the teams that were the chapter experts, whether it be agriculture or auto, the IP file. Those are the workers that the last weekend before the 30th were up all night long. The Canadian team were staying all night in the embassy, and our team were sleeping on the sofas at USTR. One of the strongest leaders to me was a lady named Sharon, who was in charge of the agricultural file, along with Kirsten on the Canadian side. So I really gained a lot of respect for those two women, because they had such little sleep that weekend.
Overnight on sofas?
Yes, overnight.
So you're the first woman to hold this position, but you've also had some moments of having trouble being taken seriously as a woman. Tell us the story about the king.
So a king of a certain country and his wife, the queen, invited my husband and myself for a dinner. And upon arrival, we were greeted, and he greeted my husband as the ambassador, and then continued for the next hour and a half at the dinner table to talk about Canada with my husband and the U.S. relationship. So, you know, little things like that. And then when I first arrived, I'm a runner.
And how many miles a day do you do? Admit.
Between 7 and 8 a day. And
this is why we hate you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I first arrived, and my welcoming video, I actually did most of it running. So the interviewer, we did everything, the interview on with tennis shoes on. We were running through Chevy Chase, which is where I live in Lexington. So my Sunday morning, I'm going to go for a run. And the RCMP, which, by the way, are the most incredible men and women, the people that
tell people who don't know what that is.
So that's the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and I think I have a couple of them in here. Just fiercely loyal and fiercely protective. But so they are all ready. We're going to run. There's a runner, and there's a biker, and then there's the vehicles. And we get about 2 miles from my residence, and he goes, Ambassador, Ambassador, how much further are we going to go? And I said, oh, about 6 more miles. So he called in for backup very quickly. Which is a great story, because now they have a trainer and everybody's running, and we've been running some races together, and it's brought that entire team closer, and they're obviously more physically fit. So it's a lot of fun. So there you go. I hope he's in the room somewhere. I know he is. So yeah.
So do you still ride horses?
Well, my daughter has a horse. She rides English. I grew up on a Western saddle, so she does the proper riding, and I grew up doing the barrel racing.
Yeah, describe your barrel racing. That was pretty amazing.
So, you know, we're growing up with a father who's a veterinarian. You are, you know, the county fairs are what is your summertime. That's your pastime in the summer. For those of you I see nodding, you understand. So we would have had to choose either barrel racing. My brother did bull riding and calf roping. So I grew up barrel racing, and you know, I didn't get any ribbons, so it wasn't, I learned very early on, you don't just show up and get a trophy. You got to earn it.
Yeah.
And so then I just started really practicing, and I think I came in, you know, got like a yellow ribbon once, but barrel racing was a ton of fun, and of course it made our dad really proud, and that's what it's all about.
So Kelly, you've obviously faced those kinds of challenges, whether it's riding and certainly in the private sector and philanthropy in Kentucky. What's been the most difficult part of your job so far as an ambassador?
I don't think anything's been difficult, because when, you know, on that January morning when Donald Trump called me to ask me to be the ambassador to Canada, I just made a statement just kind of off the cuff. Well, you know, I want to work. I don't really want to go somewhere where I'm just going to be a figurehead. Right. And he said, oh no, this is a real job. He said, there's a lot at stake here. So I think that nothing's really been surprising, because I was prepared. I am surprised at the level of the fortitude that the Foreign Service officers have and the civil servants. Their knowledge, without them, I would have never been prepared for NAFTA, now the USMCA.
And you have we're coming to the end of our interview. Final thoughts.
Well, you know, I look at this audience, and I'm very emotional, because I just had my first granddaughter. So my husband and my 11th, but my first grandchild, period, granddaughter. And I have such great faith now in knowing she's going to have an incredible future, just by all the women that you've gathered here. This is pretty incredible. And the fact that you have chosen a Kansas lady in Mrs. Houston to be your fortune woman, I think that's fantastic.
Ambassador,
so proud.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you on.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.